What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, the stimulus package update, the debt limit ceiling, pretty much everything you need to know about money, investing, the stock markets. And the Senate has passed the debt ceiling increase, but there's a lot of fallout coming from that. And now this could pose to be a problem in the future because remember, this debt ceiling increase is only a temporary increase for about 2 months. And this could pose a problem when they go to increase this again the next time around, as the speech that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave on the Senate floor has really made the Republicans really, really mad, and including some of his own Democratic caucus, including Senator Joe Manchin. He actually walked off the floor, and the Republican senators actually went and spoke to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer after that speech and said, listen, we actually stepped up to the plate and went to bat for the Democrats, the 11 Republican senators that voted to pass this debt ceiling to prevent a government default. And thank God that we had those 11 Republican senators. I actually think that Mitch McConnell definitely did the right thing here on these 11 Republican senators. Definitely got to take my hat off to them. They did the right thing. We can't let the country default. We can't let the country default. Those 11 Republican senators definitely think they did the right thing there. We can't let the country default. I mean, I don't know what the other Republican senators are thinking. Country default is the worst thing that can happen. But now we have maybe a bigger problem to deal with down the road. We're going to be talking about that as well as the stimulus package. We have Democratic Representative Pramila Jayapal about what is going to happen next with the stimulus package, the American Families Plan, and what they're working on now and what is going to be happening here with the stimulus package. So I got a lot to talk about here in this episode. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. New videos come out here on our channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you find these videos helpful, don't forget to hit the like button for us down below. Okay, so late last night, the debt ceiling bill was approved by the Senate. Okay, by the Senate. There was 11 Republican senators that voted with all 50 of the Democrats to pass the bill, 61 to 38. They needed 60 votes to pass it in the first set of voting. And then the second set of voting was 50 Democrats in the final vote, which basically the first set of votes we needed to bypass the filibuster. And then the second vote, which basically allowed the Democrats to pass that vote in where they didn't need to bypass the filibuster. Now it goes on to the House of Representatives, where the House is not going to vote on it until Tuesday. But that vote is expected to pass the House because the Democrats can pass that on their own. Then it will go on to the president as long as there's no unexpected unexpected problems. The problem here that we have now is that this bill that passed the Senate and will go on to the president once it passes the House is only a temporary bill that raises the debt ceiling by $480 billion. So it's only expected to raise the debt ceiling until sometime in early December. Okay, so they're only kicking the can down the road temporarily. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a speech right after the vote passed and basically blasted Republicans right after the bill passed. I showed the speech on the channel here a few videos ago. He basically just blasted the Republicans because he wasn't happy because 38 Republicans voted against it. Only 11 Republicans voted for it. It basically was a bill to prevent the government from defaulting. And we needed 10 Republicans to vote yes, and it barely passed. 11 Republicans voted yes. Thank God. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was not happy at all, even though the vote passed by the slimmest of margins. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is getting criticized for it by a lot of Republicans, almost all Republicans, and by Senator Joe Manchin. Some people even consider him a Republican. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is getting heavily criticized for this speech. I watched the speech. You watched the speech. If you watched it from yesterday, he was very, very, very mad. He blasted the Republicans. He didn't thank the Republicans at all. He actually thanked his Democratic caucus. All 50 Democrats voted yes. 11 Republicans voted yes. But the bill wouldn't have passed without the Republicans. You have to give credit where credit is due. You would have need both parties. And Mitch McConnell spearheaded this. So you do have to thank Mitch McConnell, because without Mitch McConnell's effort, it wouldn't have passed. And Mitch McConnell was a very level-headed person here, because remember, former President Donald Trump was saying not to vote yes on this. Former President Trump was basically urging all the Republicans to vote no and essentially let the country default, which would mean that seniors wouldn't have got their Social Security payments. Children wouldn't have got their child tax credit payments. The military wouldn't have got paid. Anybody who works for the government wouldn't have got paid. Bondholders, people who own treasuries, wouldn't have got paid. The stock market would have crashed. And Mitch McConnell ignored him and paved the way for the passage. And I fully think, as a realist, as an independent, Mitch McConnell made the rational decision here. We can't have the U.S. government default. But the problem here is that Chuck Schumer, right after the bill passed, who's the Democratic leader, the leader of the Senate, because the Democrats are in the majority here, right after the bill passed, he blasted the Republicans. And I definitely think that Chuck Schumer made a very, very bad decision there. Right after Mitch McConnell helped them, Chuck Schumer blasted them right away. And this is a, first of all, very bad decision from Chuck Schumer, and a very bad thing that happens in Congress. We see this all the time, but from Republicans and Democrats, they pass a bill and then they go right back to blasting each other. And I have no idea how they get anything done in Congress. I don't even know how they work together, to be honest. Can you imagine going to work the next day after somebody blasted you really, really hard? I don't know how they do it. And I think Chuck Schumer made a grave mistake here, because now all the Republicans, I don't know if I can say all the Republicans, but a lot of the Republicans are basically saying they don't want to work with Chuck Schumer at all anymore. Now, we've heard this before from Republicans and Democrats, and I mean, they're going to have to work together at some point because they'll never pass a bill ever again. But a lot of Republicans are saying that when this happens again in 2 months, if the Democrats don't pass the bill through the reconciliation package and raise the debt limit ceiling on their own, the Republicans are not going to help them raise the debt ceiling next time around, which is in 2 months or less. And I think Chuck Schumer made a big mistake. What's the need to, right after the Republicans help you raise the debt ceiling, just like blast them in public? I really don't understand the pettiness that comes between Republicans and Democrats. That's why I honestly feel proud to say I'm not a Republican or a Democrat a lot of times, because I see this pettiness from both sides over and over and over and over. They just can't put aside their differences for one day, just all the time. And it's the American people that suffer. And they got the bill passed, but here we are back to the same old games, literally the next day. And the problem is that in 2 months, we're going to potentially have this debt ceiling issue again if the Democrats can't pass it on their own through the reconciliation package, the process they're going to try to pass a stimulus package. And remember, just a week ago, Democrats were saying they didn't want to pass the debt ceiling on their own through the reconciliation process, that they shouldn't have to do it that way. So are they going to do it that way now? And we also have a government shutdown issue, because remember, they just kicked that can down the road. Remember, the government shutdown and the debt ceiling are two different issues. People get that confused. We have a government shutdown issue again in early December as well, because they just passed a temporary issue on that as well. They're going to have to come to an agreement on that as well. So yeah, will Republicans and Democrats ever get along? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. So on the stimulus package, Democrats can somewhat start being focused on the stimulus package now, even though they still have to pass the debt ceiling bill in the House on Tuesday. Here's Pramila Jayapal on who's the leader of the Democratic Progressive Caucus in the House, which is she's mainly considered, in my opinion, right now, the biggest person on the stimulus package in the House. We have Bernie Sanders, who's the leader of it, probably the number one leader of the whole stimulus package, and definitely the leader of the stimulus package in the Senate. And then we have Pramila Jayapal, who's the leader of the stimulus package in the House. Here she is on the latest details of the stimulus package and what's going on with it.
This is what Democrats in Washington are struggling with right now. What's the best way to shrink the president's agenda to a size that will get these two holdout Democratic senators on board? Do you shrink the entire plan, funding all the same programs but at a lower rate? Do you cut certain investments entirely so that you can fully fund a smaller number of priorities? Do you lower the total cost by shortening the amount of time that the programs are funded for and hope that they become so popular that a Congress a few years down the road will renew them? These are the questions I've got about this, and I've got just the person to ask. Joining us now is Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us. I don't know, that was the best effort we could get to at conveying what has been going on at Congress, but you're actually in those meetings. You're in the room where it happened. So how much of what I just told the audience is accurate?
Allie, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me on. Look, there's some things that are accurate in that we are trying to get to a set of priorities that will be transformational, that will change people's lives, that will take on climate change, that will, provide paid leave, 12 weeks of paid leave to people, that will provide childcare, pre-K, community college, healthcare, Medicare expansion, immigration, take on the immigration issues. These are our priorities in the Congressional Progressive Caucus that are in the president's Build Back agenda. This is actually the president's agenda, just to be clear. But what is true is that we do have to get 50 senators on board. We have 96% of Democrats in the House and the Senate on board, but we don't have 4%. And our margins are so thin that we have to get every single person on board. So we are in the negotiation process. We thought that 3.5 was actually the compromise negotiation position. And it came from these priorities. It was not a number that was picked out of the air. But at the end of the day, what we're thinking about is if we have to trim a little, and I'm saying a little, then what we would like to do is have our priorities represented, and those are childcare, or really the care economy. It is Medicare expansion, it is immigration, it is housing, and climate change. Those 5 priorities that we need to include, but perhaps for shorter number of years, because I don't think we can choose and pit between childcare and climate change. I don't think we can choose between pre-K and housing. These are all essential priorities, and that's the process we're in right now. So let's see where this goes. I will say that we are pushing to make sure that we think about it from the perspective of priorities. But at the end of the day, when you talk about the number, let's be clear that this is all paid for by taxes on the wealthiest corporations and wealthiest individuals. So it does not add to the deficit, but it does make transformational investments in people's lives.
So that's really the way to look at this, right? I think any government spending has to be looked at as what's the return on the investment. So I prefer that we talk about these priorities than we talk about the numbers. We do have reporting that the president said that he could get the holdouts somewhere between 1.9 and 2.2 trillion, and we have reporting that you have said you might be able to manage 2.5 to 2.9 trillion. So, notwithstanding the fact that neither of us want to talk about the numbers, is there accuracy in that reporting?
Well, all I can say is that we are thinking it's really different. Let's just say we settle on 2.9 trillion. It's going to be a different conversation if that 2.9 trillion includes our priorities versus doesn't. It's a different conversation if we are saying we're going to means test a whole bunch of this, which we are opposed to, and put income caps that prevent two school teachers, for example, in Seattle from being able to get childcare and qualify for that benefit. So we have to look at the details, and that's why we don't want to settle on the number, because it is really dependent on how we structure it and how we implement.
Right. So 2.5 to 2.9 trillion could be completely different things. We just put up a screen that talked about the priorities on that list of priorities and some estimates that we've got of what they could pay, what they could cost. You are underscoring the fact that, you know, there's less to negotiate on climate, less on housing, less on childcare, less on Medicaid expansion. These are major priorities. So how you form whatever number you get to is important.
That's right. And we still think that, you know, the 3.5 number was the number that we thought was negotiated. So as close as we can get to that number, recognizing we got to get all 50 senators on board.
So I want to just go a little further with those priorities that you've got and the concept of a return on investment. You're calling it transformational investment. The way I look at it, because I'm a business reporter, is if you put a dollar into the economy, do you get more than a dollar back? Climate change is just one of those examples, right? The gross cost of the $3.5 trillion plan, 1.5% of U.S. GDP over the next 10 years. The net cost of failing to hit the Paris Climate Agreement benchmarks, 8.6% of additional U.S. GDP in perpetuity until the year 2100. Little bits of math like that become very compelling in this discussion.
That's right, Ali, and that is such a beautiful example of what we're calling these investments in the future. We are going to pay far more, not just in terms of dollars, but in terms of opportunity, in terms of lives lost, in terms of, you know, lack of security for our country and for the world if we do not take on climate change in reality. Now, the president is going to go to COP26 in just a couple weeks, and he needs to be able to say that the United States is going to lead on the issue of climate change. We are going to cut carbon emissions. And in order to do that, we have to have clean electricity performance standards in here. We have tax credits, clean energy tax credits. That's sort of the carrot and the stick. And if we do all of that, it will bring us enormous dollars back down the road, your concept of investment from a business perspective, but also, it will save the planet. So we've got to do this, and we've got to show leadership.
Yes, economics aside, we actually have a planet that's burning out of control. Congresswoman, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for getting.
Yeah, so as you can see there's a lot of different things they're talking about for this package. They're talking about cutting the size of this package, primarily because of Senator Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema want to be on the smaller end of the scale. Much more towards the $2 trillion size. Remember, Senator Joe Manchin wanted to be only at $1.5 trillion. Now he's saying he's willing to come up to $1.9 to $2.2 trillion. So Pramila Jayapal, the leader of the Democratic Progressive Caucus, says she wants to be at $2.5 to $2.9 trillion. So they're going to have to close the gap. And really, the question is, how low will Pramila Jayapal and the progressive Democrats be willing to come down? And how high will Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, really one or two people, be willing to come up? Remember, they do need people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, or else they can't pass the bill. Even if one single Democratic senator like Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema doesn't say yes, they can't pass the bill, because they need every single Democratic senator. There's only 50 of them, and we're not going to get a single Republican vote. Not a single Republican voted yes on the third stimulus check package either. So those $1,400 stimulus checks and those child tax credit, those monthly stimulus checks, those $250 to $300, not a single Republican voted yes on that. So that does make it more difficult to pass this next package as well. So every single Democratic senator needs to vote yes. So that's why they're having to reduce the size of this package. Now, remember that they could add a fourth stimulus check on top of the extension of the child tax credits. So the child tax credit, those monthly checks of $250 to $300, those end at the end of this year. December will be the last monthly payment for those. You will get the first, those go out to about 65 million children. they end at the end of this year, but you do get the first 6 months of this year, the January through June payments, because those didn't start, the monthly payments didn't start till July. Those first 6 payments you will get on your tax returns for 2021 that you'll file, if for the April that you'll file next year. You'll get those on your tax returns. You'll get a 6 month one lump sum, but the monthly payments will stop at the end of this year unless they can pass this package. So, I mean, December, it's only 2 months away. That will be the last payment unless they can pass this package. So they do want to extend these monthly payments. Originally, they wanted to extend them until 2025, which would be the year of 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, which would be 4 more years. But now that they have to cut the package in size, they might cut it to 3 more years, or even 2 more years, or even 1 more year. We'll have to see. They're also talking about lowering the income thresholds. Joe Manchin was throwing around the idea of maybe having a job requirement where you'd have to have earned income. So remember, the Democrats changed that in the third stimulus check package where you didn't need earned income anymore. So you could be a stay-at-home mom, or you could be someone on Social Security or disability, and get the child tax credit. So remember, Social Security is actually, in the IRS's eyes, not considered earned income. Even though you get payments and you worked in the past, Social Security checks are not considered on a tax return earned income. I don't know why it is that way, but it just, on a tax return, it's not considered earned income, even though you earned in the past. I know you have to take it up with the IRS. But Joe Manchin is considered for possibly changing, and the Republicans too. But remember, the Democrats are going to change, or they're going to pass this bill without any Republican votes. The Republicans really don't have a lot of say in this next package. Remember, they also could add a fourth stimulus check in there for adults on top of the child tax credit, the monthly checks, for as low as $100 billion. So they could add a fourth stimulus check for adults, not in addition to the child tax credit, those monthly checks, for as little as $100 billion of the total size. So remember, when they're talking about a $2 trillion, $2.5 trillion, $3 trillion price tag, they could add a fourth stimulus check on top of that for as low as $100 billion. So that's 5% or less than 5% of the total price tag. And right now, we have a lot of different groups advocating to add fourth stimulus check into this package on top of the monthly stimulus checks for children, as well as there is expected to be an adult tax credit for people making under $50,000. So I will keep you up to date on this. As you can see, here's an article from fortune.com. And we have seniors group calling for Congress to add a $1,400 stimulus check in there as well into this package. So remember that the second stimulus check was added into the package at the very last moment. And the third stimulus check package, they added in the $10,200 unemployment tax-free provision at the very last moment as well. It was actually after the House of Representatives passed the bill and the Senate added it in at the very last moment. So they always seem to add things in at the very last moment, even after the bills are written. And in the third stimulus check package, it was after the bill was written and the House passed the bill. The Senate actually passed the bill and wrote a different version of the bill. So they can very well add things in at the very last moment, like they have in the past. So I will keep you up to date on everything. Make sure to subscribe down below. New videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can click this video here to watch my newest stimulus check video next. And this video is, there's 2 or 3 different Social Security raises on the horizon. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.